Peace, peace, peace.
Peace,
What's going on?
man. Appreciate you joining the people versus the anti-people. I mean,
Right.
what you guys are doing with the From the Feet Up exhibit, you know, and just kind of really, you know, I don't want to say exhibit, that's a double entendre, right? Exhibits. What our brand is about, you know what I mean? And just kind of curating and telling our own stories. Tell me about the idea, you know, the infancy of the idea to bring an exhibit to Port Authority.
Well, you mentioned stories, and ownership of a story like this was one of those that was important. This here represents a unique story that has never been told. And what that is a common story that we all probably know, but no one ever thought to stop and take the time to curate it the way we're going to do it and tell it. And that story is how the Port Authority played a pivotal role in people coming in to experience hip-hop, and those of us who were New Yorkers who grew up in the age of hip-hop, we left and traveled abroad, spreading, you know, quote-unquote hip-hop gospel. So during that time frame, when this became more of a global thing, you had people who didn't realize they were ambassadors for the culture because we were just living this. The shoes were the shoes, the jackets and coats were the coats, our pants were our pants. We got on buses and we left. We came back, you know, hopefully God willing, and other people came in to do the same thing, experience everything that we had going on here with hip-hop in its infancy. So that's the story that this tells. There are a few people around who appreciate that kind of story. Koe and I are the kind of people who appreciate those kind of stories all day long. So, you know, I'll let him tell his side in terms of when I approach him to finally put this thing together. You know.
Right. So Sean called me up on the strength of my brand, which is called ATW, 1,000 Words, and our brand is pretty much dedicated to preserving the essence of urban/hip-hop culture. We're the only brand where you can get a KISS tee. We're the only brand where you can get a Latin Quarter t-shirt. Or
A Dondi tee.
you know, a Dondi
You know,
t-shirt.
and licenses for these.
Licensed with all the individuals who I call friends, Martha Cooper, Jamel Shabazz, Joe Conzo, Ernie Panicoli. These are all my brothers and sisters. I represent them. And we found a way to sort of, you know, relive their glory through the imagery. And the t-shirts are basically just another medium to preserve the art. You know what I mean? It's all done the right way, you know, in conjunction with the artist. A lot of the t-shirts have blurbs. We're telling stories through the t-shirts. So when Sean called me up and said, Koe, I love what you're doing with ATW. I got this thing that's jumping off at the Port Authority. Let's join forces and let's knock it out the park.
Yeah.
A year later, we made that happen. We knocked it right out the park.
Yeah.
And this particular location is just an extension of what we've already done downstairs,
Yeah.
which was really well received by the Port Authority. First time that they've done anything in conjunction with hip hop culture.
Yeah.
And it's been so well received that they brought us upstairs to this dedicated spot right here to
Yeah.
keep the flavor going for an additional 30 days.
Yeah.
Well, talk about that. Talk about the unprecedented of doing something like this at the Port Authority. And I'm just piggybacking on what you said. I love that the Port Authority being a main artery almost to spreading hip hop. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I
And just
mean-
cousins down south and the whole.
We went to college, we went to families for summer, we did all that kind of travel for whatever reasons, you name it. But this exhibit represents the first time any government agency in this country has ever decided to let hip hop in and tell a story like this. This is the first major transportation hub in the country to ever have anything like this on display. And, you know, when we had this originally downstairs, as Koe alluded to, we had a smaller space, about a 100 by 15-foot space, let's just say. I'm, you know, estimating the measurements, but now we have, you know, maybe 10 times the size of what we had. But downstairs in the first 58 days, we had foot traffic and exposure to 4.5 million people. So the Port Authority brass understood that the impact of this exhibit on people that were passing by was something that they didn't want to die. They realized that it needed to go on for a little bit longer because it was still resonating with people, even right down to the day that we were breaking down the exhibit downstairs. There were still people who were like, wait a minute, where's this going? You're done? And it just showed us and it showed the Port Authority that this was a story that really resonated emotionally with a lot of people. So when we came up here, the stakes were higher because we have more of a space. Excuse me, we have more space. And then we had to expand on a lot of the concepts and themes that we put together in the original installation. We were able to do it more liberally, if you will, because we could spread out and give everything its space to breathe and tell the stories a little more. Koe was a big proponent in making sure that things were strategically placed where at certain angles, you were able to catch everything regardless to which point you came in from. Being able to, even the aesthetics of the milk crates. Milk crates are a big part of the hip hop experience that does not get talked about. That was the real original utilitarian tool for hip hop. And
just the hood in general, it's a basketball hoop.
Yeah, it's a basketball hoop. It's a carry records. It's a seat outside the bodega. It carries spray cans.
100%.
So that was, one of those unsung elements to this exhibit that we wanted to put on display and tell that story, because again, with Koe being a master storyteller, me taking pride in the stories that I tell, we wanted to make sure that we had enough of the elements that touched on you emotionally here. There's still a few elements missing. We won't say what they were, because if we come back and do this again, those elements are going to be included next time. But there's still a couple of things that we weren't able to include in here that we know if they were in residency here now, people might pop the glass. That's how far we really have thought about what this exhibit means to us and it means to other people, as well as the people who we included in it.
And it's only fitting that this exhibition took place on the Deuce, because back in the day, the Deuce was really our urban runway. This was our catwalk back in the days. You got fly, you came up here to show your wares, show your swag. Yep. This was the spot, it was the epicenter, of New York, that very spot that you could be fly and be noticed, go up to the LQ on 48th Street, and take in Rakim in your Dapper Dan suit, which is
you might come
on
home
display.
a little lighter.
If you wasn't alive, if you wasn't alive, dude,
you might lose your gazelles or something on the way.
But that was the beauty of the era. You were willing to risk life and limb to go see your favorite hip hopper and rock your wares, knowing that Brooklyn was in the house, Uptown was in the house, but that really didn't matter because it was hip hop that you were magnetized to. It was like, I'll roll the dice to go see the R perform. I ain't no joke. I might get stuck up by the Real 50 or Hawk or any of those Fort Greene cats, but it would at least be worth it to see that brother rock the mic and be amongst greatness. That's something that's missing these days. Everything is sort of packaged, you know what I'm saying? It's homogenized, it's not all the way live. We wanted to bring back that feeling that we had back in the days when you see that box, which is an authentic box.
I heard
from the 80s. That wasn't bought on eBay. That's been with me since '83. Right? So when you see the box, when you see the milk crates, when you even see the Chic album, we put that right next to the turntable to really let people know that it was that very album that sparked one of hip hop's biggest records. Which is on the wall over there. So everything is thought out, it's purposeful, nothing here is haphazard. The Fat Laces have been with me since the 80s. All the wax, the Mystery of Chess Box, and the Deuce was like
Kung Fu Central.
Spent all day up here, bump into the RZA in one of the spots, and that's what we did. We came up here to watch flicks, we came up here to take flicks, we came up here to just do what we did. We wanted to bottle all that greatness up and put it in this display, this exhibition, so that these cats who are walking by, leaving their jobs 8 o'clock at night, who are sort of like working stiffs now, right? They could at least reminisce for that 1 second and say, damn, I remember walking down a block with a box like that. Maybe feel good after a long day's work, right? Like that little feeling that you get, walking down memory lane. And that's been happening since the inception. People are just passing by, like just giving us thumbs up. And they all on the window like, yo, and cats trying to buy the sneakers on display,
Buy the boombox.
Yeah, we're watching out for the cats with the glass cutters, man, because they're probably out there trying to get in. But it's good to know that so many people are seeing this as something that was special at one time or another in their life.
Yeah.
And just to give them that feeling, even if it's for a split second, just passing by, so they could reminisce on sort of our golden era. We think it's well worth it, man. You know?
Absolutely.
We didn't get paid for this.
No,
For the record, we did this
was
on
a
the
labor of
strength
love.
and for the love.
Yeah.
So talk
of
to
the
me
culture.
about, because you just gave a beautiful, quick history lesson right there. And you guys talked about kind of your origins of getting into this. Talk about your origins in the culture. You're from Brooklyn, you're from Fort Greene. I didn't catch where Koe's
I'm from Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk about just kind of your entree and shorties into the hip hop culture and why it just resonates with you up until this point that you're still telling the story.
Well, for me, I've been into sneakers as a child of hip hop since 13 years old. So in my 30 plus years of being in sneakers, I've had over 4,000 pairs. And growing up at that age in New York City, where hip hop was going this way, you know, experimenting with being a b-boy, eventually becoming a graffiti writer, you know, music production. I've ran my own record label. Like, one of the things that's been a constant through my entire life that anyone who's known me for a very long time will tell you has always been there is sneakers, through all of it. And footwear is wearable art, you know, and it's also something that allows us to connect to people in ways we've never connected before. I have sneakers from countries I've never been to. I have friends, you know, not physically, but, you know, in communication and network and everything in countries I've never been to. And just growing up through, like what Koe was saying, as a child in New York, Kung Fu movies and the Deuce on Easter and all the other things, Coney Island, all the other things that we would do. This is our lives on display. This isn't necessarily something where we had to do homework. This is our lives. We've put our lives and our personal journeys somewhat on display here for you. So for us, we take pride in the storytelling, because if we're not telling the story properly, we're not being ourselves. And, you know, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we made a statement with, especially in terms of footwear, we have a lot of unique artifacts here in other ways too, but there's no Air Jordans.
I noticed. I noticed.
And when we were downstairs, you know, in the smaller residency, it was like, hey, how come you got no Jordans in there? I was like, you think about the time frame that you see we've captured for you. Wasn't hot like that. What? Yeah, they weren't always popping like that. And then it starts this conversation, because anyone who's anybody now feels like you're not a real sneakerhead, if you will, unless you had Jordans. And one of the other subplots to this, and the statement that, you know, I wanted to make, and Koe, you know, agreed with me, is these kids today pay more to look the same than we ever paid to be different. And when you look at all of the shirts, the imagery and everything that Koe put on display, and you look at the footwear that we put on display, everything in here, from both perspectives, represents originality. You're not going to see it every day, and I don't think that 8 out of 10 people who pass by here that are younger than 25 even know what the heck is on display. And I'm okay with that. You know, Koe's okay with that, because now it's a teaching moment. Whether they want to swallow their pride and admit it or not, they're going to walk past here and see a bunch of stuff they know nothing about. That's part of the lesson that we wanted to teach, without having to physically sit people down and be like, listen here, youngin'. The storytelling through this exhibit is what did that.
Right. Now, I believe, if my research is right, you're in academia as well.
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to ask about, because I have like a little bit of a toe in the academia world, just through, you know, colleagues, and I've done, you know, lectures and things like that on a university level.
Yeah.
As a, what I would consider a practitioner of hip hop, entering into that academia world, and you know this is going on all over USC and Harvard and Indiana, where they're curating and cultivating hip hop spaces, not necessarily with us being in it.
They're not doing it like this.
Talk about, just talk about.
They're not doing it like this.
especially from, you know, the 40 plus, like the true hip hoppers and the golden era cats. And even I'm more of a 90s guy, came in a little bit after probably the high school class under y'all. Talk about our importance in stepping up and keeping this culture and telling the stories in an authentic manner.
Well, what this represents here, and I'll let Koe elaborate on this because he lives it every day in terms of the importance of archiving and owning your rights and licensing. But this is the fifth element of hip hop right here. This is knowledge. It's not just a forward that everybody tries to make money off of. This is the knowledge. This is the fifth element right here because we curated this with the specific intention of teaching. And you know that you've reached people, even the people who already know what some of this stuff is all about. You know you've reached them already when they stop. And then they have that moment where it's like, oh. And then they start seeing more and more as they travel on. And it jars their memory on things. So for us, education isn't just in secondary education space. For us, it's in the school of hard knocks, it's the streets. You know, because this is where this movement of everything began. It didn't begin in the lecture halls and all the places where secondary education tries to rule education. Hip hop was created out of being anti-establishment. Sneakers are anti-establishment because when they were chosen to be part of the hip hop uniform, it represented places that you could not go. You could not go to clubs, you could not go to work, you couldn't get married, you couldn't go to certain restaurants. There was a whole lot of places you could not go with sneakers on. And you were actually judged if you were the kind of person who wore sneakers every day. And that speaks to the actual revolutionary nature of why hip hop was created. So for us, this is school. This is where we intend to educate and have our message. Now, do we do secondary education? Yes. I'm a ranking scholar at Drexel University where I teach sneaker culture. But it's within the discipline and the parameters of fashion and merchandising, which is to say they want me to teach it within the grand scheme of what they do, which I'm happy to do because it's historic in nature because sneaker culture has never been taught in a Division I university, 25,000 students anywhere. So they're kind of opening the door and letting us in. But there's another piece to that. Yeah, there's another piece to that. And you know, it's like I told Koe. Being able to celebrate, like how we see people celebrate owning your own masters, how about owning your own stories? How about owning your own personal journey?
100%.
Which Koe is a big advocate of, and that's why he represents the people that he represents. And he lives by making sure that that stays in check. He makes sure that people aren't being abused for their intellectual property. Making sure that, you know, when you do create something, you know exactly what it is you're venturing into if you decide to do a creative offering for somebody. Because all of that is part of how we got to where we were in the first place, with people being robbed and ripped off and plagiarized. And, you know, we've heard, you know, all the rumors and everything for rappers' delight. You know, like, at what point do we get, you know, sharp enough, not saying that nobody was sharp back then, but at what point do we get sharp enough to make sure that that never happens again? Because it has happened quite a few times since Rappers Delight.
It keeps happening today.
Right.
Right
And
now.
speaking of, I mean, I've been down with this culture since 1979. So I was 9 years old. That 12-inch hanging on the wall was the first piece of hip hop that I ever owned. Rappers Delight, the original 12-inch right there, 1979 on plate. And now we're considered the OGs, right? So we're in a unique position now as elders where personally I feel duty-bound to preserving the culture. You know, it's given me so much over the years. I'm not just saying recreationally, because I was a graffiti writer for many years. That's where the name Koe comes from. And I decided that I didn't want to be a starving artist at one point. And I started my life as a serial entrepreneur in the 90s, opened up my first business in 1994. So I decided back then that, you know, I wanted to be a part of this culture as an active participant, but I wanted to be able to sustain myself and my family by way of this culture, because I saw the promise back then. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, Def Jam, making records, gold artists, platinum artists, this thing is gone soon. We got hip hop movies. The fashion is starting to become big now.
Yeah.
You know, we had the foresight back then to keep our eye on things. Sometimes you lose focus because you're in it. And you don't see what's going on, right? And we were in it. When I said we were in it, B-boys, graph writers, you know, style childs, you know, we were all of that, right? But at some point I realized that this thing could be something. And in the 90s, when I was in my mid-20s, I decided that I had to embark on free enterprise. And I said, now it was time for us to start making money. We have to monetize our talents, and we have to get our little piece of this rock right here. So my current business, besides 1,000 Words, is a management company where I manage a lot of these photographers. And we do probably 90% of all the licensing for film and TV for anything hip-hop. If you've seen any hip-hop documentary over the last 10 years, I'm talking anything from Biggie, Tupac, whatever, my company has licensed images to all those networks. So I don't talk about it, but my credits are in all of those productions. If you read credits, you'll see Koe Rodriguez, LLC, under those archival credits, and a lot of my people. So what I wanted to do was make sure that they weren't getting ripped off.
Right.
Because you got to remember, all these images were shot 30, 40 years ago. They've sort of matured now to the point that they're worth something.
Right.
There's one image that Jamel Shabazz owns that's probably $1 million image. I can't tell you which one it is, but you know, we did some licensing a few years ago, and the royalty reports don't lie. So there's a lot of money in licensing. You know, we watched Coca-Cola and all these other companies, cartoons, you name it. You know, you go to Walmart or Target, all those images that you see on TV, it's all licensed. The Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, that's all licensed from something. So we were like, yo, hold on. Where's our Rolling Stone t-shirt?
Yep.
Where's our Kiss t-shirts? They didn't exist. That's why I started this company. So I could help my people like Paradise Gray, the Great X Clan, and the Latin Quarter, help him put together something where he can monetize, because his archives are bananas.
Right.
He has images from the golden era. I mean, his book, No Half Stepping, is incredible. If you don't own that book, go get No Half Stepping. It is a testament to the Latin Quarter's greatness.
Yeah.
It was the great incubator for the golden era. Right. So me grabbing him and saying, yo, Paradise, you got all these great images, what are you doing with them? People have been getting at me, they want a license, but they throwing me shorts. He comes on board as a client, I get him paid what he should be paid for those images of the real 50 Cent hanging out with Eric B. Who else has those images? You're not gonna get that from Getty, right? So they gotta come directly to us. We break them. We break them because a lot of these guys ain't doing too good. They need that paper. So what they can't do, I do. You know, I politic with all those networks and all the brands that want all this stuff. You know, I don't care if it's Japan or a company in Brooklyn. You know, we sit down with everyone. Nike, Puma. That's my image of Shan in Queensbridge. I shot that for the Yo MTV Raps campaign a few years ago. Puma hired me to shoot that. So I own that. And that's a big part of us, you know, creating wealth for ourselves that we own. Just like a recording artist owns his masters, I own my intellectual property. So if you want to license that image, you don't go to Puma, you come to me. And that's where being smart helps us to sustain a great life, because when you own your property, you can live off your property. When you give it away, i.e. like a buyout, you don't own anything.
And that's the thing about the education space. So if we enter the education space and we want to impart this kind of wisdom like Koe was giving right here, which that was a lot of money you just gave away. Jesus.
A whole lot of
That was a lot of money you just gave away. But for the sake of empowerment, right? You got to do that sometimes. And when you go into the education system, be it public schools, charter schools, you know, colleges, universities, when you approach them, they need to understand that you're an expert in your field when you come in. And you need to be allowed to impart that wisdom exactly like that, 100% raw and free of the politics that exist in all of those educational spaces. Because again, like Koe just said, he appreciates who he works with. So not only is he representing those artists to make sure that they're taken care of, when it's time to do something like this, he can do something like this in his sleep because he already has a true appreciation for what every single image in here means. And you gotta be able to teach that to people sometimes. Koe lived it, but again, that fifth element of hip hop being knowledge and mentorship, you gotta be able to pass that on, unadulterated, unfiltered, and raw to the next generation so that they don't get caught, you know? And that's what's key to this is, you know, there was so much in here, so many messages and so many things we wanted to achieve in this that we're doing, and we don't have to really speak about it too much. We just let this breathe, and it's happening, you know. And of course, we're, you know, honored to speak to you today and put, you know, some verbals to, you know, in context to what we're doing here. But this really, you know, to be as, it speaks for itself.
100%.
To be as humble as possible about it, because all of the work that we did behind the scenes to get it to that point. And that can only be done by people who have a certain level of love and appreciation for everything in here. Like, you couldn't hire, you know, the staff of Complex to do this. You know?
And that's the conversation I wanted to have. So even more so than the exhibit, which is super dope.
Thank
the
you.
words
Thank
that you guys are sharing, that's what I wanted to have heard. Because I know anybody who takes the time to do this is going to say exactly what folks need to hear and exactly what and talk about this, though. Just having the curator mentality. Because anyone who keeps their box from back then knows, like, you were born with that curator mentality of, I have a brother who holds on to every single tape. So when the Bobito and Stretch tape started coming out, he's like, oh, I got everything.
All those tapes are original. I have a big bag of all original tapes from the 80s when I'd literally be Friday nights pinned to the radio, taping BLS, commercial break, I'll go right over to KISS. And if you really want to stay up late, WHBI,
Of course,
you know, world famous Supreme Team. And actually, a lot of people don't know that Mr. Magic was actually on WHBI before he was on WBLS. So, again, we were just true students of the culture. We were young. Hip hop was exciting. It felt like it was a little secret society, like, oh shit, this is for us?
Yeah.
So we were all in. So I didn't know that any of this stuff was going to make a difference later, but I knew that I wanted to keep it in my life because it was special.
Yeah.
A lot of these things were things that we paid for with money we didn't have.
Of course.
Yeah.
We were sort of marginalized. So to buy $50 kicks in '82 was like buying Gucci kicks in 2019. Right? So we didn't have that money, but we knew we had to be fresh. So we went and got that money.
Yeah.
Bagging at Food Town all day to get some paper, what have you, right?
Newspaper delivery, whatever.
But being an artist, you know, I have an appreciation for aesthetics.
Right.
For a lot of things that are handmade, things that just have a certain beauty about them. When I walk down a block, I see shit in color. Even if it's black and white, I see it in color. I could put things together, and I get that from graffiti. We had to literally take an outline and scale that on a train or a wall, add colors, add dimension, add characters, add a background. Like, we were layering things, like with Photoshop, how you layer now, we were doing that back in the days. We were branding,
Physically,
right?
manually.
So as an artist, I just knew that I needed to keep a lot of these things in my life, you know, and it's just great to know that I can dig in the crates now, pull them out, and share them with, you know, New York or whoever, because really this is the world.
Yeah.
Of course.
The Deuce is the world.
100%.
You got people from all types of countries walking by here
100%.
right now. So we're literally sharing this with the world, not just New York. And that's exciting knowing that we can go in the crates and pull out a box that's been around since '83 or an old turntable that, I mean, there's a penny on that needle. I don't know if you caught that, but, you know, we used to have to weigh those needles down.
Of course.
You know, just the little nuances,
details like that.
those details.
But you gotta know to know.
You gotta know all those tapes, man. People don't understand the essence of the cassette tape, man. Like, we used to trade tapes, like currency. Yo, I got that Cold Quest. Yo, I got that Kumo D joint. I I remember the first battle. If you had that on tape with Kumo D and who was it? It was Kumo D and I forget the other brother's name. But if you had that
Busy B.
Busy B.
Busy B.
If you had that tape in '83.
Took us a minute to get that, y'all.
Yeah, sometimes we gotta dig in the hip hop files. But yeah, that was like gold back then. If you were like, yo, I got that bad, because a lot of people didn't stay up late to record.
Right.
That was like a thing unto itself.
Yeah.
Being able to go the next day and see, yo, I got this off the radio. People used to, I think DMC talked about that, like it was a form of currency
Yeah.
back then. They would tape the shows, dub them,
Yeah.
and sell them for like $20 at the schoolyard.
Yeah.
But this is for true hip hoppers, man.
So there's that level of effectiveness with this also that can only really be done here. Does that mean that if someone shows appreciation for it at 30th Street in Philly or Union in DC or anywhere else along our travels with hip hop being universal, will we not do it? That'd be silly. We would do it, but we would do it in a way where we would want to tell a little bit more of their local story as part of the situation as well. But this one right here, 100% unadulterated, unfiltered, truthfully hip hop in New York City, which is, actually why the exhibit is called From the Feet Up, Sneakers Hip Hop in New York City. And, the funny piece of it is when I was coming up with the title for this, right? So I had two titles. There was From the Feet Up, Sneakers Hip Hop in New York City, which was the secondary title. The original was From the Feet Up, it started here first. And I really was, when I was creating this, I was on that vibe, in terms of the planning before I called Koe and pulled him in. It was like, that's really the statement that I wanted to make. Like, I hear what all you other people are saying out there, but it started here first. So again, the masterful storyteller and strategic planner that Koe is, he was like, yo, we should probably go with the second one so that we don't
alienate before you need to.
right,
alienate.
don't cause people to get on the defense about it before they see it.
Yeah.
So that's why now it's called, From the Feet Up, Sneakers Hip Hop in New York City, because then the other part of that also is, for those who aren't well versed on the history of hip hop, now you say it started here first. Well, what started here first? That's a whole can of worms that we will never be here to explain when people...
Sneakers, the first sneakers were made?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So that's a whole can of worms of things that we would never be able to clarify sitting here every day because we wouldn't be here.
That's kind of what hip hop really is. If you think about graffiti, it was fleeting art, ephemeral, you know what I mean? So if you didn't see it when it ran, it might have got buffed the next day, and that was it. So we kind of like the idea of creating something on a limited time basis where if you didn't see it, then it's gone.
Yeah.
Because that's really what this was back in the day. That park jam that happened that one night, if you weren't there, then you missed the Cold Crush battle with next guys.
Yeah.
Right? You missed that subway car that Dondi did because now it was pulled out of service.
Yeah.
Or you missed that B-boy battle that took place at United States of America in Queens with the Rocksteady crew and the Dynamic Rockers. So that's really the essence of hip hop, things being fleeting. So if you didn't see this, then boom, you missed out.
Yeah.
It's got to be down.
That's like in hip hop spirit,
Yeah.
it's gone.
Yeah.
And that's it. So
Yeah.
come see it, grab your flicks,
Yeah.
share it with social media, because we really want people to take the story and run with it and create their own narrative, their own dialogue,
Yeah.
and pass that on, because that's really what hip hop is about anyway.
Right down to the very end, like Koe said, you will see this disappearing right before your eyes. And that was a part of the experience as well. That was exactly part of it too, what we wanted to add to the experience. You seeing us take it all down.
I appreciate you, brothers, man. You guys
Yo, thank you,
dropped
man.
many gems.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ, for your support.